Hello and welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time here, hi, I'm Cassie. If it's not, thanks for always tuning into my videos. Today we are doing my January wrap-up. I read more books in January than I have ever read before in a month, I think. So good. I'm shook with myself. I read a total of 14 books this month. 4,584 pages. I literally can't believe that. And I think I had a pretty good reading month, so we're just gonna get right on into it because I talk a lot and I don't want this to be too long of a video. Starting with my very first read of the month, I read Dragon Haven by Robin Hobb. This is the second book in the Rainwild Chronicles, which is the fourth series in the Realm of the Elderlings. So I can't really tell you much about this, but I gave it 5 stars. I loved this. I love this part of the world in the Realm of the Elderlings. I love the conversations that are had in this book about women's rights and body rights and reproduction rights and like all of that. I thought that was really interesting, and I mean, I love a dragon. But there definitely are some flaws in this because you definitely can see that this is supposed to be the second half of the first book and there's supposed to be one book. But I still loved it. Like, yes, it's stretched out to end up being one book itself, but I still really enjoyed it. I wrote notes on these, so I should look at them. Some of my notes on this is that Hobb writes the most uncomfortable sex scenes, and this book is really just full of horny teenagers and horny people in general. Like, this is the closest smutty book I think we've ever gotten from Hobb because they're just thinking about doing it all the time. But not gonna lie, I kind of enjoyed it because they're teenagers, and I remember myself as a teenager, and yeah. Also, I've never been in a relationship like this, but how it's portrayed of the coming out of a toxic relationship and kind of noticing the flaws in it, I felt like that was done really well. Obviously, I can't speak from personal experience, so I would love to know if you've read this and you have sadly gone through something like that, how spot on that representation is, but I thought it was done well. I can't rave enough about these. These are just so good. The whole series starts with Assassin's Apprentice, which I rave about all the time on the channel, so I'm not going to go farther into it. But if you have not yet read Robin Hobb, I highly suggest picking up Assassin's Apprentice. What a way to start my year with a 5-star read, though. And then the next book I read was Half a King by Joe Abercrombie. This was my first introduction to Joe Abercrombie. I have been told this is his YA series, and that kind of explains to me why it wasn't as dark as I wanted it to be. So Half a King follows Prince Yarvi, who is born without an arm, and in this world, fighting and being able to defend your city, your country is like the most important thing, and he's not really a good fighter because he can't like hold a shield properly. He struggles with that, but thankfully he is the second son, so he will not have to be king, and he debates going into the priesthood instead. But within the first chapter of this, so literally not a spoiler, his dad and older brother are murdered, and he now might have to be king. And it just kind of follows his journey as he tries to reclaim the throne because some sneaky shit happens. And I actually really enjoyed this. I had been telling everyone this was a polar fantasy, but you take a look at that, and I was told it was polar fantasy. There is about 50 pages or so set in an icy tundra, and the rest of it is set on the sea, and there is also a like almost kind of like desert-like setting in this. They go through a lot of different weather things. I don't know, I would still probably count it because it does have a good 50 pages, and it's only like 30 pages long, but it's definitely not fully set in an icy world. It is more set on boats, and it is seafaring goodness, and I am trying to read more seafaring books, so if you have some recommendations for me, please leave them down below. I don't know if I said, but I gave this book 4 stars. The writing in this is matter of fact. It's not flowery. It's not really full of descriptions. It's literally just like, here's what's happening. I really appreciated that, but I know some people really like lots of descriptions and all that. It's not really my favorite thing. I really enjoyed how matter-of-fact this is. I think it probably could have been a little bit bigger. It could have used a little bit more depth into it, but it is the first book in a trilogy. The thing is, however, this book stands so well on its own to me that I don't know if I want to pick up the rest of the books. Like, it's so good just by itself, and I don't think I will enjoy the next books as much. So I'm debating not finishing this trilogy because I really enjoyed just this book, and I think it ends so nicely, in my opinion. If you have read the entire trilogy, let me know down below if I should continue. and if they get better or worse or whatever to like help me decide. Because yeah, I just really liked this as it is, and I think it would have been a heck of a good standalone. I also love that it just throws you right in the beginning, and I read it so quickly. I read it on a live sprint at the beginning of the month. I read it all in one day. I definitely would recommend it, and I'm very excited to dive deeper into Joe Abercrombie and go into his adult stuff, because obviously he's like the daddy of grimdark, and I would like to experience his daddiness. Oh my god, that was cringe. And of course, since we started the month so great with a 5 and a 4 star, we had to have a 1 star. I read The Seance in Apartment 10 by Ambrose Ibsen. This is just a short horror novella. I did not like it. I do not like when my horror books are just like everything happening in like the very short aspect at the end. I just felt like not enough happened in this. I didn't get creepy vibes really. Like, I wanted more of the possession part and the scary creature. Seance in Apartment 10 is a horror novella about a girl who moves into like this sketchy apartment because she has summer courses at her school, at her college, and she can't afford to stay in a dorm by herself. So she rents out this apartment that's really, really cheap. There's only like 3 other people living there, and they have a seance in Apartment 10, and shit happens. But shit really doesn't happen. I don't know. Like, stuff happens, but it's just so anticlimactic the entire time. My sister read it and I think gave it 3 stars. She was not expecting me to hate it so much, but I really did enjoy this. I just kept waiting for things to happen and for like the terror and the horror and the thrillingness of it. And I just feel like I didn't get that. Again, I'm not a big fan of short books, and this is under 200 pages because I feel like sometimes I don't have enough substance in them, and I think this also might have... I think where the pages it's at, it's like stretching to fill voids, but if it had been longer, they could have made those voids more impactful, if that makes sense. So, sadly, a 1 star. I mean, you're gonna get them sometimes, right? Oh, what else did I say? It does do a good job with like atmosphere, but it just didn't nail it enough for me. It's also like your normal like Ouija board story. There's nothing like groundbreaking in it. And it is self-pubbed, so I definitely do think that they could use a little bit of editing, and that might affect the substance of it, but yeah. And the next book I read was Verity by Colleen Hoover. I decided to try Colleen Hoover, mostly on Christy's recommendation and my one friend's recommendation. My sister has also read this, and she gave it, I think, 3 stars as well. I gave it a good old 1 star. You know, as someone who's not a romance reader, I am not the targeted audience, even though this is not necessarily a romance book. It's definitely thrilling, so it's like a romance thriller. It kind of crosses boundaries. Because it was trying to be both, it wasn't doing either very well, in my opinion. I couldn't get behind the romance, but I also couldn't get behind the thrilling aspect because I knew everything. I think that's also a big thing, is people always say the twists in this book, and I saw everything coming. I don't understand what twists we're talking about because I thought it was very predictable. And some of my notes is on page 103, I was kind of irked by the stance on bodies. I felt like there was a serious amount of fat shaming happening there, and didn't really like it. The writing is repetitive. We were told a lot that a moment was supposed to happen between the 2 of them, and then he escaped a moment that he'd regret later. Again and again and again and again, and I know... This is the thing. For Colleen Hoover, everyone raves about her. I was expecting better writing, better smut. Like, I don't understand why she's so big, personally, but maybe it's because I'm used to like fantasy writing, not necessarily romance writing, and there's nothing wrong with either, but they probably are different, I'm guessing. Also, there's one part where I found it ironic because the girl in this is writing a story and she's reading someone's story, and she says, I'm bored of all these sex scenes in this girl's like autobiography. And I was just like, girl, me too. Like, I'm really bored of these sex scenes. Like, stop with them. Like, these are not good sex scenes. I'm bored of them. I feel like a major flaw for me in this was that we tried to make our main character a unreliable narrator, but didn't succeed at it because she only doubts herself like the littlest bit, and so I never really doubted what she was seeing or feeling. So it And this also is very trigger warnings for child abuse. Truthfully, I just thought the child abuse felt gimmicky. There's obviously kind of a reason for it, but I just didn't enjoy it. Yeah, I also didn't tell you what this is about because I feel like it's full of spoilers, so I don't want to tell you, but essentially we're following an up-and-coming author who is asked to finish off this big time selling author Verity's series because something has happened to Verity, and so she moves into the house with Verity's husband and things get kind of creepy, but not really creepy and very predictable. But most people love this, so I'm in the minority here. But yeah, 1 star, didn't like. Nope, not for me. Will I pick up Colleen Hoover again and probably hate myself for it? Yes, I plan on it. And the next book I read this month was Memory of Souls by Jen Lyons. Finally, a book I can love. I gave this book 4 stars. This is the 3rd book in the Chorus of Dragons series that starts with Rune of Kings. Can't really tell you what this is about, but Rune of Kings follows Kieran, who finds out that he is actually a son of one of the political families, and it's really just his life story. Honestly, I really am doing this really badly, but Rune of Kings is full of dragons and gods and politics and magic and lore, and it's so good, and it's told in such a unique way. I've raved about Rune of Kings so many times. If you haven't picked it up, you really should. The way it's told is really, I think, what sells it for me, which is two different narrators narrating a story. Normally someone's life in the first book, it's Kieran's life story, and then we have an overarching narrator, and it's just good, and it's funny, and I really, really like it. The 3rd book didn't do it for me like the 2nd one did, which was a 5-star read for me. We went back to 4 stars. Honestly, at times, I wasn't as in love with this one. We are back to following Kieran's story in this one, where the 2nd one we're following Janelle's story. And I will say, I think that Jen Lyons writes female characters way stronger than her male characters. In this one, I felt like the male POVs were kind of blending together. Specifically, they were kind of blending together, and I couldn't really make out their own tone for them, where her female characters, I feel like she does a much better job at making them sound very different. You do get a couple female POVs in this, but not often. I always do forget that it's really hard to get into these books. The first 100 pages or so, there's so much happening, so much context, so much really good stuff happening, but it makes it really, really hard to get into. But once you're in it, I'm obsessed. So I feel like they'd be a really good series just to binge, but I am now waiting for the next book because I want the paperback, and it's not out in paperback yet. They're also very heavy in dialogue, so that is like I think a warning to have if you like less dialogue and more like narrating. The way it's told, the conversations, just it makes more sense to have it done through dialogue, so it does like make sense with like how it's told with like the 2 different narrators and then a 3rd narrator. I also didn't really like that the overarching narrator also is one of the POV narrators, so I felt that it was just listening to the audiobook would be very confusing because you wouldn't see which ones are like the footnotes and which ones are like his story. So that was like a flaw for me, but this book had 3-star parts and I was like about it for most of the book, but this ending was 5-star worthy, and Jen Lyons knows how to end a freaking book, and the ending, and also Relis Farr is just daddy. Maybe that's why I didn't like this one as much too, because he's not in this one as much as the 2nd book, and I just want more Relis Farr. I love Relis Farr. And there's a lot of pining too in this, and I'm hoping for a poly relationship, really, really, really hoping for it, and the pining is so good. Anyways, if you haven't read this series, if you haven't picked up Rune of Kings, please, please, please pick it up. It's so good, and then talk to me about it. After that, I read all of the Wayward Children series books, so I read book 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Because I'd already read 1. I have a separate vlog for all of these, the TBR Peachy-a-thon vlog. I will link it down in the description bar, which has a spoiler-filled part and then a non-spoiler-filled part with all my rankings and my thoughts on all of them. I am going to mostly skip over these because I have that, and if you want more in-depth, you can go there. But for the series in general, I just wanted more from every single book. I didn't give a single one 5 stars, but some did get 4 stars. The newest one being my favorite of them all. It also kind of just falls flat for me on the fact that I am a world and plot driven reader, and they are very character driven books. And I feel like because they're short, though, I'm not given enough time to spend with the characters because I don't attach to characters that fast. So the ones I do love tend to be like Jack and Jill stories where we've been following that character for a really long time, so I'm kind of invested, and I really like the Moors. That's it. My least favorite was the first one, and none of these books that I read in this vlog did get less than a 3-star. They were all 3 or 4 stars, where the first book in the series I hated and gave it 2 stars. So there's that. As I said, I just wanted to go over those really brief and quick, and watch the vlog if you want more in-depth thoughts. And then the next book I read this month was The Wheel of Time, book 1, so The Eye of the World by Robert Jordan. After watching the show, I finally thought it was time to pick this up. God, was this slow. I gave it 3 stars. It was a solid 3-star read, and I'm very excited to continue reading on. I'm very happy that I got through it without watching the show. I think I would have DNF'd it because at least I had the show and I knew what parts I was interested in, and I knew that there was parts coming that I did want to know about, and I like the world and I want to be more knowledgeable on the world. But dang, this is slow and it's so repetitive at times, and there's like a good 100 pages of just them walking to a village. Something happens at the village, they have to leave. They walk to another village, something happens at the village, they have to leave. And I don't understand why we needed so many of them. I got the point right away. You could have just like fast forwarded a little bit. They didn't need to all be described so much. The characters are also very plain and vanilla. This is gonna sound like such a hateful review, but I did like it and I'm excited to continue on. But like Rand, boring. Perrin, boring. The only one I like is Matt. But I'm very interested in the Aes Sedais and the Warders and the magic system and like the Waygates. Like there's a lot going on with the world that is just so intriguing to me that I'm very happy I suffered through this really long chunky book. It did take me a really long time to read. There are little small things in this book that do bring the enjoyment, like all the time the boys are talking to girls and they're like, I wish I was better with girls, like insert this name. It's always one of the 3 of them, and it's just funny because they all think that the other ones are better with girls than they are. And I felt like that was very true to like teenagers and young boys. And I have little things tabbed because I'm very interested to see how it goes from here on. It is very much a setup book, as I said, so the 3 stars I'm not complaining about because I still enjoyed it. Setup book, and I will say one thing is I was never confused in this book. Jordan does such a good job of like fleshing out character motives, the magic system, the world, without being too predictable but still like not confusing you. Like there's still like little Easter eggs and hints, but I'm never like, wait, what? And so although it's such an expansive series and it is slow, I would say if you're looking to get into like high epic fantasy, like series that are spanning like lots of books, this would be one that I would almost recommend starting with because it's not confusing where some books are confusing. It's like I can understand why they chose Brandon Sanderson to write the last 2 because I find their writings very comparable. They're very vanilla. They're not confusing. They're not necessarily the best I've ever read, not gonna lie. Like I love Brandon Sanderson, but I'm not obsessed with him. And I don't think I'll be obsessed with Robert Jordan either because their writing style is very plain and in your face, but that's not a bad thing because it lets you dive into these worlds and not be freaking confused. Yeah, so I'm excited to continue this one. I also didn't really tell you what this is about. The Eye of the World follows a bit of a like prophecy. They're trying to figure out the dragon reborn, and they know that it is one of 3 boys in this village, and you're following the 3 boys who get whisked away in order to keep them safe, and you're trying to figure out which one is the dragon. It's a chosen one story, and it's pretty good. I liked it. We'll see what I think with the next installment. And the next book I read this month was Near the Bone by Christina Henry. This was a 5-star read. This was my favorite book of the month. Ugh, so good. If you have read No Exit, I actually think that these are very comparable. One is a thriller, one is a horror though. This is a horror novel, which follows our main character, Mattie, who has lived on the mountain with her husband, William, for as long as she can remember. They've been alone when all of a sudden they stumble across the carcass of a dead fox that has been like mutilated. They know that they are no longer alone up on the icy mountain. But Mattie can't decide what's worse, the monster outside or the monster inside. trigger warnings for literally everything you can think of in this book. I can't tell you like main trigger warnings because they are really big spoilers, but just like trigger warnings for gore, for abuse, for a scary creature, literally everything you can think of though, probably a trigger warning. I definitely would look them up if this is something that really bothers you. This one is so good. Like, I can't. The atmosphere in this is perfect. I'm very intrigued by the main plot point of this book. I would recommend this book. To everyone. It's so good. And the thing that I really liked about this, which is what I liked about No Exit 2, which is why I would compare them other than like the isolated setting in like an icy area that they're kind of trapped in, is that there's always action happening. Like, it's just full of things happening. Like, it never slows. It's just fast paced. You read it so fast. It's so good. I also listened to the audiobook for this and I did enjoy the audiobook. I am now trying to push this on all my friends, on everyone. Please read this. It's not super scary. Like, there is like a creature in it, but I feel like if you have read thrillers such as No Exit, you're not getting much scarier in this. There's just a creature. That's like the most terrifying part of this, other than things that are human terrors, which the human terror is personally what scares me more, and I just find them super creepy and good. Just read this. I just loved this so much. 5 stars. Read it. I am very excited to read more of Christina Henry now. I've only read one other book by her. I'm not a big retelling fan, so I'm kind of nervous about all her retellings, but whenever she has ones that aren't retellings, I'm 100% reading them because this is so good. And technically I have read one more book, but it's part of a secret TBR that you will be seeing hopefully sometime in February, so I will not be going over that book currently. I'm not even going to tell you what it's about, but I will add it on to my February wrap-up and give you a little review of it there, but it also will be in a vlog coming soon. And now I'm going to show you my genre blanket, because why not? And so this is what the month looks like on my genre blanket. Lots of high fantasy, adult fantasy. This is all the Wayward Children's pretty much right in there, with some horror and some YA. I'm really obsessed with how this is going. I can't wait to show you the progress next month as well. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. If you made it all the way to the end of this video and you'd like to leave me an emoji just to say that you were here, you can leave me a flamingo emoji. I'm pretty sure there's one of those. I'm looking at a coffee cup that has a flamingo on it. Anyways, thank you so much. If you'd like to connect with me on other platforms, my Bookstagram, my book Twitter, my Goodreads, and my beauty channel, all linked in the description bar below. Have a wonderful day, guys, and thank you so much for always watching.